The internet doesn't tremble unless something irreversible has just been unleashed. And tonight, it's shaking like never before. One name. One live stream. One sentence that allegedly cracked open a marriage the world thought was untouchable. No warning. No filters. Just a voice cutting through the noise and dropping a narrative so explosive it instantly hijacked timelines, group chats, and celebrity news feeds everywhere. People clicked expecting drama. What they got felt like a cultural emergency. Because this wasn't framed as a secret affair whispered in the shadows. It was painted as something far more disturbing, betrayal happening out loud, in plain sight, while the cameras were rolling and the world applauded. Alleged insiders started surfacing. Screenshots were teased and yanked away. Rumors of recordings, private confrontations, and sealed conversations began circulating faster than facts could keep up. Fans froze as old interviews suddenly sounded different. Old scenes felt staged. Old smiles felt rehearsed. And at the center of it all sat one woman, stunned, blindsided, allegedly realizing in real time that the life she defended might have been slipping away for years. Social media erupted into chaos. Sides were chosen within minutes. Celebrity friends went suspiciously quiet. Others liked the wrong post and sent the fandom into hysteria. Nothing felt accidental anymore. Then came the line that allegedly changed everything. A statement so cold, so final, it made people question whether love was ever the point at all. Because if even half of what's being whispered is true, this isn't just a breakup story. It's a slow burn scandal about power, silence, and a truth that may have been hiding in plain sight the entire time. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. This is a fictionalized, dramatized celebrity gossip narrative inspired by public commentary and online speculation. It is not a statement of fact. It began the way cultural earthquakes always do, quietly, deceptively, with a notification most people almost ignored. A live stream scheduled late. No promo. No warning. Just a name that guaranteed chaos and a thumbnail that felt intentional in its restraint. Then the screen went live, and everything shifted. The tone was wrong from the start. Not playful. Not messy. Heavy. As if something had already gone too far to be taken back. Tasha didn't smile. She stared straight into the lens like she was daring the truth to stop her. And then she said it. The line that allegedly split the fandom in half before anyone could even process it. Not that the marriage failed because of cheating. But because one partner had been erased long before the paperwork ever surfaced. The chat exploded instantly. People typed in all caps, demanding clarification, receipts, context. Others begged her to stop. But she kept going, building a narrative piece by piece, each sentence framed as something she'd been told, something that kept coming up, something too consistent across too many alleged sources to ignore. According to this fictional account, the issue wasn't secrecy. It was audacity. Todd wasn't hiding. He was moving freely, comfortably, as if permission had been assumed, or worse, earned through silence. And the more she talked, the more viewers started replaying old moments in their heads, realizing how many red flags they'd applauded as confidence. She referenced old scenes without naming them directly. Dinners where one person spoke and the other waited. Interviews where jokes landed a little too sharp. Red carpet moments where body language screamed distance while cameras caught smiles. Social media began pulling clips in real time, timelines syncing with the story unfolding live. It felt orchestrated, but not by her, by the internet itself, filling in gaps faster than she could speak. Then came the first alleged leak, messages. Not shown. Described. Late-night texts with names blurred in retellings, framed as casual, harmless, until they weren't. The implication wasn't lust. It was priority. Time spent elsewhere while someone at home waited, wondering when absence became the norm. The tone shifted when she brought Kandi into it, not as a villain, not as naive, but as someone slowly bending herself smaller to preserve something she believed in. Tasha suggested insecurity without mockery, fear without judgment. A woman allegedly trying to be cool, to prove she wasn't threatened, only to realize, too late, that flexibility had been mistaken for consent without boundaries. The chat quieted for the first time. That's when the story stopped feeling like tea, and started feeling like tragedy. Because this wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about emotional erosion. About loving someone who allegedly kept moving further away, and calling it freedom. Then the live stream took a darker turn. Alleged confrontations behind closed doors. Questions met with deflection. Hurt reframed as jealousy. According to the narrative, the most devastating moments weren't explosive fights, but cold dismissals. Being told nothing was wrong while everything felt wrong. Being made to feel unreasonable for noticing distance. The word gaslight flooded the chat. Tasha never said it, but she didn't need to. The implication hung heavy. She described a moment when the realization allegedly hit, not that he was cheating, but that he no longer checked in emotionally at all. That realization, she claimed, was what broke the illusion beyond repair. Social media chaos followed in waves. One celebrity friend allegedly unfollowed another midstream. Fans noticed within seconds. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Reaction channels went live simultaneously, dissecting every word, every pause, every facial expression. Twitter wars erupted over whether this was exposure or exploitation. Old alliances fractured publicly. And just when the narrative felt like it couldn't escalate further, Tasha introduced the idea that would haunt the rest of the conversation: leverage. That love had allegedly become transactional. That access, image, and proximity to power had been currencies long before affection faded. She hinted at legal tension without specifics. Prenup whispers. Negotiations framed as entitlement. The idea that once the emotional bond dissolved, what remained was strategy. Viewers leaned in harder. This was no longer gossip. It was a reframing of an entire relationship arc. Old episodes resurfaced, with new commentary layered over them like forensic analysis. Fans claimed the signs were always there. Critics accused Tasha of rewriting history. The division grew louder, uglier, more personal by the minute. Then, just as fatigue set in, she dropped another alleged detail, one that snapped everyone back to attention. A moment involving other women not hidden from view, but present, visible, undeniable. Not framed as infidelity, but as indifference to optics. As if humiliation wasn't collateral damage, but part of the power play. The chat froze. Disbelief gave way to rage. Supporters of Kandi flooded the comments with heartbreak emojis and declarations of loyalty. Others pushed back, accusing the narrative of bias. The internet became a courtroom with no judge and millions of jurors shouting at once. As the live stream approached its end, the energy shifted again, this time into something colder. Tasha slowed her speech. Her voice dropped. She said the most dangerous part wasn't what had already been revealed, but what hadn't yet surfaced. That there were conversations she wasn't ready to repeat. That there were people who hadn't spoken publicly but would. That once certain details crossed into daylight, the story would no longer be about who was right or wrong, but about who had been using whom all along. And then she stopped. Just like that. No wrap-up. No clarification. The screen went dark mid-thought, leaving the chat screaming into the void. Notifications exploded across every platform. Did you hear that? What does she mean? Who else knows? The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was anticipation. Because whatever had just been unlocked wasn't finished unfolding. It was only the beginning. This continues a fictionalized, dramatized celebrity gossip narrative inspired by online speculation and commentary. It is not a statement of fact. The silence after the stream didn't last. It never does. Within minutes, fragments of what had been said were clipped, slowed down, dissected, and reposted with captions that turned suggestion into certainty. The algorithm did the rest. Overnight, the story metastasized. Accounts claiming to be close to the situation suddenly found their voices. Burner profiles appeared, dropping vague, but carefully worded comments under viral posts. This tracks. I've heard similar. Y'all don't even know half. Every 3 words ignited another 1,000 theories. And at the center of the chaos sat Kandi, quiet, offline, her silence louder than any denial could ever be. By morning, old interviews were trending again. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Fans froze frames, zoomed into body language, slowed down laughter that now sounded forced. A joke once written off as playful suddenly felt loaded. A pause once ignored now looked like resignation. Reaction channels ran 24-hour coverage, some defending, some condemning, all feeding the fire. And then came the alleged recordings. Not released, hinted at. Whispers of audio messages, heated arguments captured unintentionally, words spoken without the awareness of future consequences. No proof surfaced, but the idea alone was enough. The internet doesn't need evidence to convict, it only needs a compelling story. Tasha returned, not live this time, but through carefully chosen words on social media. Posts that didn't accuse, didn't confirm, but nudged. She spoke about patterns, about women shrinking themselves, about men confusing access with entitlement. Each post felt like a response without being one. Fans interpreted every sentence as confirmation. Critics accused her of manipulation. The divide widened. Meanwhile, alleged insiders began painting a picture of emotional chaos behind closed doors. Raised voices, slammed doors, nights spent apart under the same roof. Not explosive fights, but exhaustion. The kind that settles into bones and makes people stop trying. Then the narrative took a sharper turn. Money entered the conversation fully, no longer whispered. Commentators speculated about power imbalances, about what happens when one partner's name opens doors the other walks through. The word strategy resurfaced again and again. According to this fictional tale, affection had allegedly been replaced by positioning years before the public noticed. Business meetings doubled as social leverage. Introductions mattered more than intimacy. Love became something assumed, not maintained. And once that assumption cracked, everything underneath it collapsed. Social media chaos intensified when a supposed group chat screenshot began circulating, unverified, blurred, but devastating in implication. Names were obscured, but the tone was unmistakable. Laughter where there should have been concern. Dismissiveness framed as confidence. Whether real or fake didn't matter, it felt real enough to fuel outrage. Fans demanded statements. Silence was interpreted as guilt. Every hour without clarification hardened opinions further. Kandi supporters rallied, framing her as a woman who gave too much. Others pushed back, accusing the narrative of victimization without accountability. The discourse turned vicious. Behind the scenes, the story suggested emotional breakdowns that never made it to camera. Alleged nights of crying alone. Alleged moments of begging for presence, not fidelity. Moments when the realization hit that sharing space wasn't the same as being seen. According to the whispers, the most painful truth wasn't betrayal, it was indifference. The idea that someone could move through life unbothered by the hurt they caused. That realization, fictionalized insiders claimed, was what finally snapped something that couldn't be repaired. Then came the celebrity reactions that poured gasoline on everything. A cryptic post from one industry friend about knowing your worth. Another liked a comment shading men who marry ambition, but resent it later. Fans tracked every interaction like detectives. One unfollow sparked 1,000 think pieces. A repost without context became a declaration of war. Even silence was catalogued, interpreted, weaponized. The story grew so large it no longer belonged to the people at its center, it belonged to the crowd. And just when fatigue threatened to dull the outrage, another alleged detail surfaced, darker than the rest. Not about romance, but about boundaries. About situations that crossed lines not because they were forbidden, but because they were careless. According to the fictional narrative, there were moments when respect should have intervened and didn't. Moments witnessed, not hidden. Moments that forced someone to smile publicly while unraveling privately. The idea alone made the audience recoil. This wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about humiliation as collateral damage. The conversation shifted from what happened to how long. How long had this been going on? How long had fans been watching a performance? How long had the cameras missed what mattered? Old episodes were re-watched like crime scenes, dialogue paused for double meaning. Viewers swore they could see the exact moment something died behind the eyes. Others accused the internet of projection. But no one could stop watching. The narrative had crossed into obsession. As night fell again, a final rumor rippled through the chaos, one that reframed everything once more. That the next reveal wouldn't come from commentators or live streams, but from legal proceedings. That once certain documents were discussed openly, the emotional story would collide with a financial one. That what looked like heartbreak might expose something colder underneath. The implication hung there, heavy and unresolved. Because if that rumor held any truth at all, then what was coming next wouldn't just shock fans. It would permanently change how this entire story was understood. And the internet braced itself, knowing the quiet before that kind of revelation never lasts. This concludes a fictionalized, dramatized celebrity gossip narrative inspired by online speculation and public commentary. It is not a statement of fact. The tension didn't break, it condensed. By the time the next wave hit, it felt heavier, sharper, unavoidable. The story had outgrown rumor and slipped into something colder, something procedural. Not louder, but more dangerous. Because now the whispers weren't about feelings. They were about paperwork. About timelines. About who knew what, when, and how long the truth had been deferred behind smiles and brand-friendly silence. Commentary shifted from reaction to analysis. Lawyers weighed in without naming names. Financial experts stitched together hypotheticals. And the internet realized, almost all at once, that this wasn't just emotional fallout. This was about stakes. According to the fictional narrative circulating online, the real fracture line wasn't the breakup. It was the moment love allegedly stopped being the central asset. When emotional currency dried up, the only thing left to fight over was value. Suddenly, every past compromise looked different. Every concession felt like a receipt waiting to be totaled. Fans who once debated chemistry now debated contracts. Old statements about building together resurfaced with a different tone. Had that always meant something else? Had partnership been defined in two completely different ways from the start? Then came the alleged legal maneuver that sent shockwaves through the discourse. Not confirmed, not documented, just persistently whispered. That one party believed access equaled ownership. That proximity to success had been mistaken for entitlement to it. The idea alone detonated comment sections. Supporters called it exploitation. Critics called it revisionist history. But the more it circulated, the more it stuck. Because it explained too much. It reframed years of tension into a single, brutal question: was this ever about love? Or was love just the cover charge? Social media reached a fever pitch. Fan accounts turned into war rooms. Threads, thousands of posts long argued over intent, power, and accountability. Clips of past interviews were now overlaid with ominous music and captions that read like indictments. Influencers cried on camera, claiming personal triggers. Others mocked the emotional investment, fueling even more outrage. Every reaction became content. Every silence became suspicious. The people at the center of the storm remained quiet, and that quiet felt intentional. Strategic. As if waiting for the right moment mattered more than defending perception. The most unsettling rumor to emerge wasn't about money or infidelity, it was about control. About who got to define reality. According to the fictionalized leaks, there were moments when one version of events was enforced simply by being repeated louder, longer, and more confidently. That doubt was reframed as insecurity. That hurt was reframed as jealousy. That boundaries were reframed as limitations. Viewers recognized the pattern instantly, not because it was celebrity-specific, but because it was human. And that recognition made the story resonate far beyond fandom. Then came the emotional collapse portion of the narrative, the part people couldn't stop talking about. Alleged private moments where the weight of realization finally crushed denial. Where someone understood they hadn't just lost a partner, but years of self-trust. Where grief wasn't loud, but hollow. The idea that you could love someone deeply, and still be strategically outmaneuvered by them struck a nerve. Comment sections filled with personal confessions. Strangers saw themselves in the story. That's when it stopped being entertainment and became projection. Celebrity reactions continued to pour fuel on the fire. A vague interview answer here. A pointed lyric change there. A sudden announcement of healing, or new beginnings, that felt too timed to be accidental. Fans tracked everything. Screenshots stacked like evidence boards. Even unrelated news got dragged into the discourse, reframed as allegory. The story had become a lens through which everything else was viewed. And then, just as the noise reached its peak, the tone shifted again, this time toward finality. The last circulating rumor was the most chilling. That once all narratives were stripped away, what remained was not villainy or innocence, but incompatibility so profound it had been misinterpreted as drama. That one person believed love meant sacrifice, while the other believed love meant access. That neither definition was negotiated honestly. And when those definitions collided, the fallout was inevitable. Not explosive. Inevitable. The kind of ending that feels sudden to outsiders, but long overdue to the people living inside it. As the dust settled, one truth lingered heavier than the rest. The internet never really wanted clarity, it wanted confirmation. Confirmation of suspicions. Confirmation of fears. Confirmation that success doesn't insulate anyone from emotional erosion. The story didn't end with a statement, or a verdict. It ended with exhaustion. With a collective realization that some relationships don't fail loudly, they fail slowly, quietly, while everyone is applauding from the outside. And that's what made this narrative so unsettling. Not the alleged betrayal. Not the rumored leverage. But the idea that it could all happen in plain sight, documented, monetized, and still misunderstood for years. The final silence wasn't peace. It was aftermath. The kind that leaves people staring at their screens, refreshing feeds that no longer update, wondering if the truth was ever meant to be clean. Or if it was always meant to be this complicated. Because once you see a story like this through to the end, you don't just move on. You look back at everything differently. And that discomfort, the one that doesn't resolve, that's the part that lingers long after the internet finds its next obsession. If you're still here, it's because something in this story grabbed you by the chest and refused to let go. And that's not an accident. Moments like this don't come around often, the kind that fracture timelines, split fandoms, and expose how thin the line really is between image and reality. This isn't just another celebrity headline you scroll past and forget. This is the kind of cultural shockwave people will swear they watched unfold in real time. And once the next detail drops, there will be no catching up. That's why you cannot sit on the sidelines now. Because the conversation is still moving, still mutating, still pulling in new reactions, new alleged leaks, new voices that will change the narrative all over again. If you leave, you won't just miss updates, you'll miss context. You'll miss the moment when one comment flips the entire story. You'll miss the clip everyone argues about tomorrow. You'll miss the detail that makes everything you just heard hit 10 times harder. So hit like if any part of this made your stomach drop. Subscribe if you don't want to be the last person hearing about what happens next. Turn notifications on because the next development won't wait for you to catch up. And comment, because your take might be the one that sparks the next wave of debate, the next viral thread, the next shift in how this story is seen. The internet moves fast, but scandals like this move faster. Don't blink. Don't scroll away. Stay locked in, because once the next piece falls into place, everyone will be talking, and you'll